All right, guys, it's Jahlon, and we have a lot to unpack this month from the official live stream from Intrepid Studios for Ashes of Creation. If you watched the live stream yesterday, you will notice that Mr. Jeffrey Bard was not there. The sad truth is, Jeffrey Bard has departed Intrepid Studios. It has been 5 long years since Intrepid started this journey. And in that time, people have been helping Steven chase his passion project, chase his dream. Well, the thing is, sometimes people have the opportunity to chase their own passion projects. And that is what Jeff had the opportunity to do. Jeff has decided to pursue his passions in the VR space. The nice thing is Jeff did leave a goodbye message to the community. My dearest Ashes community, it is with a heavy heart and a considerable amount of sadness that I announce my departure from the Intrepid team. The last 5 years at Intrepid have been an incredible experience with so many memories that I will cherish. I've learned a ton, grown as a person and as a designer, and I'm always going to look back and appreciate my time here. This is a really, really big thing that happened at Intrepid Studios. I want to dive into some of the other parts of what it means when your lead game designer departs, but that's not really news. That's going to be more an op-ed video. It'll be up there when I do get it finished. And let's just stick with the news today. We did find out that Stripe is now the default payment method at the shop. This has been a long time in the making. Back in March of 2019, Steven said they were going to move away from Exola, and they were finally able to make that happen. Sort of. A few things here. Stripe will take a credit card or a debit card, but obviously, as a payment processor, they do not take PayPal. If you need to use PayPal or one of the other payment methods that Exola offers, it is still an available option. For all of the Alpha 1 testers, just so you know, spot testing is set to be on Wednesdays. Of course, as we saw this week, that is subject to change. On the staff onboarding process, they have onboarded 6 new people. They have brought on 3 producers, an engineer, a recruiter, and a human relations person. For your studio update, they are hoping to be in their new studio in the middle of June. The server room is being set up this coming week. And then next week and the next week and a half, all the cabling, all the electrical is going to be put in. That should allow Intrepid to move in on time in the middle of June. As a reminder, for all of the Alpha 1 testing, all the footage, all the stuff you hear about, remember Alpha 1 is not a content test. It is not a marketing alpha. The content part of Alpha 1 testing is later this year. Right now they are working on a lot of engineering things. We're going to talk about those in just a second. Now, this month had a video and it was really good. It was smooth. Steven recorded it in 4K on his 1080 Ti. So you can see there's a certain level of smoothness already going on that is going to get better as they get the rest of the ghosts in the machine worked out. They did upload this as a standalone on YouTube, so you can go and watch it. And I do 100% recommend you check this video out. Just remember, it is a preview, it is a showcase, it is a sneak peek behind the curtain. The first part of the video does look a lot like last month's as they redo the dragon part, but if you stick with the video, you will see that they do get into some of the other siege stuff. You see things working, you see the trebuchets, you see the ballistas, you see some of those door physics and the gradual breakaway physics on the door, on the gates. The test that was recorded was 120, 130 people, which isn't quite at the level where they want for Alpha 1, where their goal is to have 100 versus 100. But the good news is they had 300 participants in the first test of the night, which is actually above their A1 goals. So these are all good signs. With that said, I do hope Intrepid chops these 30-minute videos down to about 10 to 15 during the live stream. I think a 30-minute video, they're losing a lot of people, especially when you drop a 30-minute video in after 32 minutes of lead up. That is a long time commitment for a stream. But the fact that they put the video out as a standalone is completely brilliant, and I hope they continue to do that. Also, for the Alpha 1 testers, sieges are going to be a daily activity 4 times a day, so you will be able to get into those sieges if you weren't one of the people that was in the testing that was recorded. Few other content notes here. When you watch this, Realize the diminishing returns on crowd control are not currently active. Also, the way collision functions isn't exactly how it's going to work. They have player collision in right now so they can get data. Eventually, inertia, momentum, all those things will factor in. Those are going to be things they work on when the server stability and functionality is finalized. Now, the problem with a 2-hour live stream is a lot of things are gonna get lost, in the noise, in the background noise, and there were a lot of good things that were said during the show. I wanna let Intrepid speak for themselves here. So for the next few minutes, I'm gonna splice in some clips. What I think knocked this live stream out of the park really was McP. McP came in and he really hit some things where he said, "This is the problem. This is what we're doing. This is what we know. This is how this process works." I've said for about a year, Intrepid needs to take a step back to their roots, what they were doing with transparency. I think they need to take that a step further and kind of do what I do with Ashes 101. They need to sort of do a how does this work? Because that's what McP did, and that carried a lot of weight. So I'm just going to put that entire segment in. I'm also going to put in the segment about where Steven talks about abilities in Alpha 1 and how what you're seeing is not representational of level 1 to level 15, how some things are being tested earlier so they can get some ideas of what work, what doesn't work. And then finally, I want to talk about where Steven talks about weapon attacks and the split body attacks and those split body animations. I think Intrepid did a really good job of talking about these segments, so I'm going to just splice them in and I'll be back in a minute.
The big thing we found out during our testing is we had some sort of ghosted AI controllers that were just hanging out all over our world, and they were just increasing and not going away over time. So we've decreased the ticking on those, but we have yet to find the cause of the perpetrator. But we've added instrumentation to discover that. So hopefully today or tomorrow.
And this is in regards to what you guys noticed if you were in the Alpha 1, where like the longer the servers went on, the more you saw like rubber banding and strange things happening. That was kind of correlating to this issue.
And then the next was precisely that's the cause.
Yeah. And then the next things that you guys are working on and focusing on, which, is obviously stuff that we're trying to work towards as far as feedback, which is, performance optimizing at the network level on the server processing of MPCs and client performance. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so every test, what we do is we run a series of profiles on the servers and also on the clients. And we also have profiling at the cloud level, at the hosting level. So using those data points, we're able to identify during these large tests, what is the performance killer on the server or the client. And then we knock down, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You knock those down and then run profiles again and get the next thing or the next 4 things that are causing it. So it's an iterative process, but having these large scale tests is really one of the few ways to really find these things that show up at scale.
Next thing you guys were working on was like the hitching and eliminating that stuff. Can you talk a little bit more about that side of things?
Yes. So one thing that we do for optimization is we kind of merge character meshes together, and we weren't doing it in the most efficient manner, and it was causing regeneration to occur pretty often, which would hitch the client as these things were merged together into a new mesh. So Alexi did some fantastic work on that and knocked that all of that out. So now we have a much smoother performance with the client.
So right now it only goes up to level 15, right? Mm-hmm. And the composition of class skills or archetype skills kind of has to tread a fine line between 2 roads. One, we want it to be representative of of skills, not just that would traditionally be found 1 through 15, but we're actually introducing some skills that might be found later because we want to test those particular ideas and how the skill functions. So this is kind of a bastardization, so to speak, of what leveling will look like and what skill compositions will exist for particular archetypes in an environment like Alpha, where you're not actually seeing what level 1 through 15 is going to really be like when the game launches, but per se how it is now so it can facilitate our needs during this alpha phase, right? And that's an important thing to keep in mind.
And I know you talked a little bit about the split animation, Stephen, but can you maybe go into a little bit more detail about like what that is,
Sure.
how that works? Because maybe not everyone understands exactly what that means.
Absolutely. So if you guys recall, about 2 years ago or so, with the testing that we did during APOC, a lot of that was focused around getting action combat information. And initially, when we began that testing, we had full split body animations and combo attacks, essentially with weapons, where your upper body would perform the animation of the attack, right? And that upper body would be locked, but your lower body would be free to continue moving. And that's what we refer to kind of as that split body. So that allows you to move while you attack, per se. Right now, what you're seeing with these combo attacks on the weapons front is that your body is essentially locked in this root motion where you're moving forward with each attack. And that can sometimes feel a little cumbersome, right? But the feedback we got early on during APOC was that without that weightedness that is incorporated from the root motion, it felt floaty, and people didn't feel that the attacks were very substantial. So we introduced that root body motion in order to provide some additional weight to the attacks. Now we're kind of rethinking that approach from an action standpoint, at least with regards to the weapon attacks, right? And the idea there, and just to give further context why weapon attacks are important, a lot of times in MMOs your weapon attacks aren't that important, right? It's all about your kind of ability system. But the weapon attacks in Ashes of Creation are intended to provide actually these ancillary status conditions that occur. You can spec points into the different groupings and class of weapons that your character might use. So for example, if you're wielding a dagger and you're doing these stab attacks, it might have a chance, if you spec points into it, to proc a bleed effect. And that bleed effect will synergize then with your class kit that you've spec'd into for your ability system. So for example, if you have a backstab against a target that's bleeding, you might deal amplified damage, or you might, you might cripple the target or snare them, so to speak. So the weapon attack is an important component of the combat system. So we want to make sure that as we're doing this combat revamp, that we are essentially taking into consideration player feedback and sentiment about how they want a reactive and more mobile weapon attack system.
Now, one bad thing about this live stream, it was a 2-hour live stream, but usually on a 2-hour live stream, it's because we're running long on the questions and answers. This month, they only took 3 questions, and unfortunately, we knew most of those answers. To highlight those real quick, does Dead XP or Death XP still affect you at max level? Yes. Based on how Ashes does Death XP, even at max level, you will have, you cannot D-level down to 49, but your stats will diminish and you'll be combat effective a level 49. So yes, Death XP does affect you at max levels. Somebody asked about ships. Can other people summon ships, or are they owned only by the owner? They are owned only by the owner. You can't summon a guild boat. There's no way to summon your buddy's boat. There's no way to give your buddy temporary access. What didn't get answered was, can you trade ships? We'll try to get a follow-up question on that. Finally, somebody asked about the involuntary item sync and how there wasn't an involuntary item sync. There actually is. If you try to over-enchant and you fail, you can blow up the item. If you're corrupted and you die, you have an RNG chance to drop an item. And then, of course, the way repairs are done in Ashes of Creation, it's not just gold and an NPC. You will actually need the materials, which keeps the pressure on the gathering system and the processing system to produce the materials that craftsmen will need to make item repairs. With that said, guys, that is it for the recap. Lots of good stuff that was lost in, I think, a very long live stream. Hopefully Intrepid realizes attention to detail and attention span and hits those points home. The conversations were great. It was nice to see Steven talk and give some stories about Jeff. I kind of hope that Intrepid maybe does like a fireside chat where some people share fond memories of Jeff. He was instrumental in shaping Ashes of Creation. If you have questions about Ashes, you want to talk more, I do stream 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You can find a link to my channel in the description below. Show up to the show, bring your questions. I'll try to give you the best answer I can. Until then, guys, you enjoy the holiday weekend. If you're in America, it's Memorial Day weekend. Go do something fun. Go to a barbecue. Go to your local pool if it's open. Until then, I will see you guys next time.
I say, Sprocket, we've reached the end of another video. Time to thank the sponsors. Yes, that will do, that will do. Shall we pop off for a spot of tea?